Mr. Vice President, thank you for joining us on
Major.
this historic day in this place of ambition, achievement, and innovation. It's an honor to be here with you, sir. It's a nostalgic day, but I want to talk to you about the future of space and in your position as head of the Space Council. Yesterday, the President seemed uncertain about the order of things. Can you clarify once and for all, for the people here and for the country at large, the moon is first and then Mars, correct?
That's 100% correct, and that's the policy that the President's put into motion since reestablishing the National Space Council and
why the ambiguity yesterday?
Well, no, what the American people saw is the President I serve with every day. He always wants to go farther, faster, sooner, and so asking the tough questions. With the experts in the room, having Buzz Aldrin standing there, having Mike Collins standing there, getting their opinions, that's just how President Trump operates. But we understand when we go to Mars, and Americans are going to Mars, that we're going to have develop new technologies, new equipment, and gain new experience that we can only gain on the moon. And the President fully endorses that. It's one of the reasons why we set the goal that we're going to return American astronauts to the moon in the next 5 years and then go on to Mars. I couldn't be more excited to be a part of it.
That played out in the Oval Office yesterday, even though it is a sort of a Q&A and it's a tough question, does it create uncertainty on Capitol Hill so members of Congress who have to give you the money to make this a reality don't know what the policy is?
Oh, no. I think people are very, very clear that the only person that's more impatient about our space program than the Vice President is the President. President Trump wants to get back on the point of American leadership in human space exploration. And he wants to send America on an unalterable trajectory to put astronauts on Mars. And we all understand that to do that, first we've got to have American rockets going up from American soil. And literally within the next year, we'll have American astronauts going back into space from right here in the USA on American rockets. Then it's to the moon where we establish a presence. So this time, Major, when we go to the moon, we're not going to visit, we're going to stay. We're going to develop resources, we're going to develop new methods, new technology, and then it's on from the moon to Mars.
That's principally on the moon about the South Pole and ice.
Right. Yeah, enormously important discovery that that many Americans have not yet come to fully appreciate, that we discovered ice on the moon. Now, and that means not only can we harvest water for a sustained presence, we can also develop fuel, we can develop oxygen. This has really changed the dynamic of American presence on the moon and the value that the moon presents to the United States to continue to advance our leadership in human space exploration.
So the question the President asked yesterday, why not Mars Direct, that's settled. We can't do that and we're not going to do that.
It is settled, but I think the American people really appreciate that they have a president who's always asking questions. I mean, in a very real sense, Major, he leads by asking questions. And so constantly pushing, constantly asking. But make no mistake about it, from the very early days of this administration, this president set the goal to revive American leadership in human space exploration. It's amazing to think that when Apollo 17 left the surface of the moon in 1972, that we've never been back, that one administration after another paid lip service to human space exploration, but basically we've been caught in low Earth orbit. This is a president who absolutely has been committed from the very beginning to reviving American leadership in human space exploration. That begins with the moon, but we're going to Mars.
Are you agnostic on the question of commercial versus NASA in terms of getting to the moon?
The president's made it very clear that we're looking to NASA and to our traditional partners to develop the rockets and the technologies to get us to the moon within the next 5 years and to lay a foundation to go to Mars. But if our traditional partners can't do the job, we're going to look to the private space industry to give us the rockets and the technology to get there. That's one of the most exciting things about American leadership in space today is the burgeoning private space industry. You have leaders like SpaceX and Blue Origin who are developing all new technologies. Space tourism will be a reality for Americans in the very near future.
Both those companies you just
mentioned. And those companies we're going to continue to lean on. They launch rockets right here from the Kennedy Space Center on a regular basis.
People know that.
To carry payloads north. Right. But we're going to continue to look to them to give us alternatives to continuing to provide American leadership in human space exploration.
Should we think of this conceptually as competitors going on parallel tracks toward the moon? Or does NASA have the front line position according to this administration?
Well, NASA will always be the organizing force within the American space enterprise, but what partners that we work with, whether it be some of our traditional partners that are very well known and been a part of this program since the days of Apollo, or whether it's new space entrepreneurs in these industries that come up. We're looking everywhere. President Trump essentially did early on what President Kennedy did. He set a bold goal to return to the moon and plan to go to Mars, set it into motion, and we're looking at the broad range of what's available in American space enterprise to accomplish that.
Is the SLS the best way to get there?
It could be, and we're committed to the Space Launch System and extraordinary work being done in Huntsville.
Behind schedule, billions over budget?
Well, it is behind schedule, and it's over budget. But the truth is that since the start of the Space Launch System program, many administrations have underfunded it, have lacked to give it the attention that it deserves. And this administration will not make that mistake. We're committed to the work being done in Huntsville with the Space Launch System. But as I said when I visited Huntsville, we're absolutely committed.
By any means necessary.
That if we can't get there on the platforms that we're building today, the rockets we're building today, we're going to get there by any means necessary. Because the president really does believe that that American leadership in human space exploration is essential. It's essential to our nation's economy. It's essential to our nation's security. But he also believes that it's essential to the spirit of this country. We are, in every sense, a nation of pioneers. And we led the world to the moon before. We've led in space. And under President Trump, we'll be leading in human space exploration. And we'll be sending American astronauts from Kennedy Space Center back into outer space before you know it.
Mars in our lifetime in mind, in a lifetime? Your lifetime in mind?
Most certainly in our lifetime.
There and back?
There and back.
In your lifetime in mind?
I don't think there's any question whatsoever that we'll be at Mars well within our lifetime. But it all begins with the stepping stone of getting back to the moon, developing the new technologies and developing the new methods for long-term human presence on another
Before I round this out, explain to me the balance between impatience and safety. This organization learned tragically at times the cost of impatience and a schedule that was not compatible with safety. What is the balance?
Well, I think you can put safety and urgency together. And that's really how we got to the moon from 1961 to 1969. When President Kennedy said it was our objective to put a man on the moon and return him safely to the Earth before the end of the decade, we didn't know how we would do that. We didn't even know what we would need to do that. We didn't have the rockets, we didn't have the spaceships, the spacesuits, but we figured it out. He created a goal. There was urgency. The American people rallied behind it. Their Congress rallied behind it. We had the resources to get it done without compromising safety. That being said, let me say one of the things that I wanted to reflect on today is that when Apollo 11 went to the moon, when they were planning to send astronauts to the moon, they weren't entirely certain that they could get them back early in the program. Of course, we lost astronauts in the fire on Apollo 1. And so there will always be risks associated with that pioneering effort.
Yes.
But
Challenger
we really
was part
believe
of an accelerated schedule, and a schedule that drove decisions possibly, and upon reflection, people aren't comfortable with that.
Major, you're absolutely right. And the lessons of Challenger have been internalized in NASA in ways that give us great confidence that we can move quickly, but we can move safely. We can put the safety of our astronauts first, but still push the outside of the envelope and lead in human space exploration.
Okay, let's move on to some other topics, if you're okay with that. Why'd you cancel your trip to New Hampshire? Can you explain to the country why that happened?
Well, I can tell you it had nothing to do with anything at the White House.
Was it the Russian sub?
There was a circumstance in New Hampshire that had developed that I'm not at liberty to speak about. But
in New Hampshire?
There was. And,
it wasn't the Russian sub?
It was a circumstance on the ground in New Hampshire that made our trip there no longer appropriate. I hope to have a chance to speak about it at some point in the future, but I can't talk about it now.
Okay. When I saw Brad Parscale at the relaunch event in Orlando, he said if the election were held today, Donald Trump would win in a landslide. Do you agree with that sentiment, and would you say that today?
I have a sense, traveling around the country, that the enthusiasm among the people that support this president is even greater than it was in the fall of 2016. And Major, I think it comes from the difference between being excited about what someone is promising to do and being excited about what they've done. This president promised to rebuild our military. He signed the largest increase in our national defense since the days of Ronald Reagan. This president promised to cut taxes, roll back regulation, and revive the economy. He's done all of those things, and 6 million new jobs have been created all across this country.
So you
promised to appoint conservatives to our federal courts. 125 have been appointed, and I think all across the country, the people see that this is President Trump is a man of his word, that he's gone out and fought every day, oftentimes against strong opposition, and he's delivered on the promises that he gave to the American people, and I think that's engendered an enthusiasm that I think is going to carry us all the way through 2020.
You foresee a landslide?
I'm anxious to get out there and tell the story, and I don't have any doubt it's going to be a competitive race. Look, the American people love contests and they love choices, but when I look at the field on the Democratic side, everyone crowding over to the left side of the political spectrum, it seems like they're all becoming more liberal. The idea that socialism has become the defining economic philosophy of the modern Democratic Party. People talking about ideas like Medicare for all and the Green New Deal. I think we get out there, we tell that story. I think we're going to have a great re-election in 2020. We're going to go out and fight for it.
Are you reluctant to predict a landslide?
Well, I think we're going to win in 2020, but I don't want anybody to doubt for a second that President Trump and I are going to go out and we're going to work our hearts out to carry a message of how we have delivered on the agenda that this president promised to the American people. And most importantly, Major, the difference that it's made in the lives of Americans. I mean, not only have we seen 6 million jobs created, but manufacturing has come back after the last president said that you'd have to wave a magic wand to get those jobs back. Not only have we seen 500,000 manufacturing jobs, but also wages for blue-collar Americans are rising at the fastest rate of any Americans. So we're seeing tremendous progress, unemployment at a 50-year low, the lowest ever unemployment for African Americans and Hispanic Americans. It's a great story to tell, and I can't wait to get out there and tell it. And I think when we tell that story to the American people, we're going to get 4 more years of President Donald Trump.
You talked about enthusiasm of the president's supporters a moment ago. How happy were you when you heard those chants, "Send her back"?
Well, I was at the rally, and I felt the same way the president did.
Which is?
Well, it wasn't what he had said. It didn't reflect the president's sentiment. Look, I couldn't be more proud of the record of this administration on legal immigration. My grandfather immigrated to this country.
Were those chants appropriate?
Well, let me tell you.
Are they the best of American politics?
On the 4th of July, I swore in 50 new Americans from about as many countries. And this year, our administration will swear in more than 1 million new legal immigrants to this country. And we cherish the contributions that immigrants make to this nation. And that's why when the president expressed himself about those members of Congress who've been saying our border patrol agents are running concentration camps, who've been engaging in anti-Semitic tropes and statements denouncing support for Israel, when people have said this country was garbage, the president just wanted to call them out. and making that clear, as the president has done in the days that followed, and calling on Democrats in Congress
Right. Yes.
to also stand up to these voices in Congress that are constantly demeaning and denouncing this country.
Right.
Is what his point was.
Understood. But to take your point of just a moment ago about legal immigration, the person involved is a legal immigrant to this country, a sitting duly elected member of Congress.
Yeah.
Were those chants appropriate? If you're unhappy with them, do you want to see them repeated? Is this part and parcel of the 2020 echo of the Trump campaign? It seems a simple question.
Well, no, Major. The president wasn't pleased about it, neither was I. And the president's been very clear about that. But what we're also not pleased about is the fact that there are four members of Congress.
Yes, but you know that this president's relationship with his supporters is as close as anyone has ever had in American politics. His relationship with them, I've seen it, you've seen it, you've felt it. This could all go away with one simple word or a phrase or something. You have a chance to say it right now. Well, don't do it again.
Major,
is that your message?
Major, the president was very clear.
Was he?
That he wasn't happy about it. And that if it happened again, he'd make an effort to speak out about it.
He will make an effort to speak out.
That's what he's already said.
Okay.
But I'm still waiting for members of the media to focus as much attention on the numerous statements of these members of Congress as they've placed on the chant of some supporters at a rally. It is really remarkable for me to think that we have a member of Congress who's engaged in rank anti-Semitic rhetoric. I mean, literally, members across the political spectrum have recognized that this reference to evil Jews, this reference to support for Israel is based upon the Benjamins, comes out of the very worst of anti-Semitism. And it needs to be denounced, but when it came time for the Democrat leadership in the Congress to act, they brought a resolution to the floor that didn't even mention that member of Congress's name. Now, I have to tell you, I was at the synagogue in San Diego, the Shabbat Poway, last week, Major, that was attacked by a gunman, and it was only for the heroism of one of their members and more lives weren't lost. We saw the horrific attack on a synagogue in Pittsburgh. Anti-Semitism is not just wrong, it's evil, and it should be universally denounced. And Congresswoman Omar's statements about Israel and about those who support Israel and about the Jewish people in this country are unacceptable and should be denounced by her party. And other statements about our Border Patrol agents. You know, Major, I went to the border last week.
Can I ask you about that?
I was the first person to bring cameras into our detention facilities because I wanted people to see how our Border Patrol agents are treating families and children, because some of these very same members were talking about children in cages and a level of mistreatment that would be unconscionable to any American. So I took the cameras in, and we saw clean facilities. I spoke to families with children. I spoke to some children in these detention facilities, and they all told me that they were being treated well. They were very pleased with how they were being treated. We also took the cameras into a facility that's overcrowded with adult men who've been apprehended coming across our border, because I wanted people to see that we truly have a crisis. But in the midst of all of that, to have some of these members saying that the United States of America and our Border Patrol are operating concentration camps is just outrageous. And I think that's what President Trump was speaking out about a week ago. And I think that millions of Americans share the president's frustration about sitting members of Congress engaging in that kind of reckless rhetoric, whether it be anti-Semitic rhetoric, whether it be referring to Border Patrol agents as running concentration camps. And the president thought it was important to stand up to them, and I'm glad he did it.
Are you satisfied with everything you saw down at the border? Could things be improved? Should they be improved?
I'm very proud of the job we're doing with families with dependent children. In fact,
everything about those conditions is acceptable.
Well, look, what many of these same members of Congress and others have said is that children are being mistreated, and it's simply not the case. I visited a facility, brought the cameras in, no restrictions. We saw lots of supplies, air conditioning, kids were watching cartoons, drinking juice boxes, told me they were all being well taken care of. But the truth is, we went over to a detention facility for adult men who'd been apprehended coming into our country illegally, not seeking asylum. And there we saw the kind of overcrowding that we expected to see. Now, I'm glad that members of Congress, including Senator Schumer, have gone down to the border now. For the last 5 months, they said it was a manufactured crisis. And the president declared a national emergency earlier this year. We've been saying that the crisis is real. We have over 100,000 people coming across our border, overwhelming the system. But our Border Patrol agents are doing well taking care of vulnerable families. They're doing their level best with adult men who come into this country illegally. But the reason why we secured $4.6 billion in additional aid is because we have a crisis at our southern border. And now the president and I are going to continue to call on Congress to close the loopholes that human traffickers are using to entice people to come and make the long and dangerous journey north.
Right. But are you satisfied with what you saw in its totality?
I'm very satisfied with the way that families and vulnerable children are being treated. But the overcrowding is not acceptable.
Understood.
It's a result of the crisis that we have at the border. And again, I want to emphasize, for the last 5 months, Democrats in Congress have been telling the American people that it was a manufactured crisis. The only thing manufactured was their outrage.
I get that.
The reality is that we have got to come together in Washington, D.C. We know the changes in the law that will be necessary to stem the flow of migrants coming from Central America, driven by human traffickers. And it's time that Congress stepped up, set politics aside, and dealt with the crisis by reforming our asylum laws.
I'm getting the wrap, but before I will let you go on this question about what the 4 members said, I just want to ask you a couple of basic questions, because this issue has come up. Can you be patriotic and oppose the president's reelection?
Of course.
Okay. Can you be patriotic and support Medicare for all?
Well, you can be wrong. You can be wrong and be patriotic.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah, right.
Can you be patriotic and support a Green New Deal?
You can be wrong and be patriotic.
That's my point.
But
well, what I wonder is,
Major, that's not the point.
Well, no, I'm just
president's
asking.
objection,
Is dissent in this country by definition unpatriotic?
No. Look, Major, my grandfather immigrated to this country. He came through Ellis Island.
I'm the child of immigrants as well.
There wasn't a day in my grandfather's life that he wasn't grateful to be an American. When I swore in those 50 new legal immigrants on the 4th of July, there were tears in their eyes. They were grateful to be Americans.
Right.
And I said to them,
who's the arbiter
I said
of gratitude?
to the people in
who's
that
the
debate,
arbiter,
I
Mr.
said to
Vice
the people,
President, of gratitude?
I said to the people,
and is that a
on the 4th
productive
of
way
July,
to measure politics and patriotism?
I said to these new immigrants on the 4th of July, I said, we have challenges in our immigration system, and I said, you all are going to be a part of that debate. I welcome them not just to the country, but to the debate. But what these members of Congress have been doing, demeaning law enforcement by accusing U.S. Customs and Border Patrol of running concentration camps, demeaning American Jews and Americans who support Israel with rank anti-Semitic statements, referring to our country as garbage.
That's unpatriotic.
It's unacceptable.
It's unpatriotic.
And President Trump is going to continue to stand up for America and call out that kind of rhetoric by those members, and it's time that Democrat and leadership in Congress did the same.
But even as they say that, they can stay.
Of course they can stay.
Okay.
They're American citizens.
Okay.
But they're speaking their mind, and this president has, I think the president has spoken for millions of Americans who cherish our law enforcement community, who cherish Israel, who cherish support for Israel, who reject anti-Semitism, and every American on the left, right, center, Republican, Democrat, Independent, who in their heart of hearts would never say the kinds of things about this country that these members of Congress are saying on a regular basis. And what the American people can count on in President Donald Trump is they're going to continue every single day that we're in office, they're going to have a president who's going to stand up for America. He's going to stand up for the high ideals of this country. And I couldn't be more proud to be his vice president.
Okay, the people over there are about ready to take a hammer to my head, so thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. I appreciate it very
Thanks,
much.
Major.